Hey, Mr. Ben Woods,
There we go.
how are you doing? Let me do this little intro for you.
Oh,
Mr. Ben Woods on the other side. Yeah.
great. To see
And everybody, big applause right now. Well, this is another big applause. Big arenas. This is what is waiting for us. So this is like the Super Bowl, right?
Well, you would know, man. You've just got off tour with Hans Zimmer playing arenas all around the world. I'm
Yeah,
gonna ask
that
Ben like later.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, real life is real life, and tour life is something completely different. So I actually enjoy being here, sitting here with you. I consider you a great friend, great artist, great guitarist, and so many cool things have happened since we've met. And just to let people know how we met, I think the first time we met, it was through a friend of ours in Minneapolis, a great bass player, Tommy Dates, and he used to tell me a lot about you. And then I think the first time we talked on the phone, I was at his flat in Minneapolis, and then he called you up and we talked. So that was the first time I think we got hooked up. So that's really cool.
That's right. However, we do have another mutual that I heard about years before, Carenza de Mars
Carenta de Mars, yes, great artist, dancer, flamenco and belly dance. Yeah,
in your group, Radio Tarifa. And she had told me that was the first I had heard of your group. I went out and bought all your CDs. It's just fantastic. And I think shortly after she moved from Spain and working with you guys to San Francisco, then I started working with her, doing
cool.
flamenco for her in all the theaters and tablaos that we had in San Francisco. So yeah, we had a couple of friends that sort of got us hooked up. It was great.
Yeah, this is great. And I think we also have the same kind of love to the same type of music styles. I mean, we both come from also a rock or metal background. That's what we love when we were young kids and we still love, right? And eventually also the world music, the flamenco and all the other great music styles. So there's some definitely a connection going on. And for everybody who's looking right now, I see there's so many hearts and like I can't follow up like all the comments. It's impossible. I want to concentrate on our conversation. But first of all, you know, Ben is a great electro guitarist, great flamenco guitarist. He's come up with some really cool ideas in the acoustic world in the sense of modifying instruments and customizing them and adapting them to a player-friendly environment, so to say. And, you know, on the poster, I said, you know, the man behind the Nylocaster. And just before you also start asking me stuff, I just wanted to tell the people that he invented or modified a very cool thing. He took Stratocasters and put nylon strings on, acoustic piezo, and there you go. And I think we both have them right here.
Oh, both
Yeah,
what?
yeah, that's cool.
Nice. Now and actually I gotta get you one of these next. I've started I've now I put wide necks on them. So they're actually 48 millimeters at the nut, which is a lot more conducive to all the intricate chords that you and I do. And instead of the
Nice.
trees, I have this little cool bar here that
The string retainer, I love that. That's very good. Good idea.
other than that, it's the same. Other than oh yeah, and these necks now have super jumbo frets. And this particular one is a maple neck, obviously, but we have rose too.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah, just got some white ones back in stock because honestly, they're my favorite. I mean, it's a timeless color. I mean, Hendrix. I mean,
I
come on.
know. I know. It's beautiful. And you don't have, you can wear whatever you want and it just still looks good. And just for everybody who wants like to listen, you know, this is like the, so it's like a classical guitar, but plugged into an acoustic amp. This is really great.
Oh yeah. Have you tried it with distortion yet?
With what, sorry?
Distortion?
Yes, I have tried it with distortion. The bendings are a little bit difficult, but I mean, you get a kind of vintage, very warm, distorted sound with it, and I love that. It's very cool.
Yeah. It's I mean, obviously, it's not going to respond as guitar, but if you can use, if you guys dial it, use a little noise gate and dial
Okay.
it right, then it doesn't have any of the weird feedback or extra noise that nylon
Okay.
would have with a piezo pickup. But yeah, it's kind of a weird, like you said, like a vintage overdrive sound more than a crunchy, thrash metal distortion. So
Absolutely. Yeah. It's going vintage with the flamenco sound, but in distorted.
I'm, I I'm just so happy that you actually found an application to use it. I mean, I wasn't sure if you were actually going to be able to use it in any live setting. I mean, you already have your signature guitar, flamenco guitar, which I want to ask you about later. But um, the fact that you brought it out on tour, I mean, I just I was blown away that it was even up to your standard. Because I
Yeah, the good thing is, I mean, people have to know the way I got this guitar is Ben Woods last year. You came out to Spain and you traveled through Andalusia, and then eventually you stopped by my house in the area of Malaga, and then we plugged it in and we played, and after you left, I kept playing and I kept finding sounds, and then I started to play to practice the acoustic parts that I used to play with a Hans Zimmer show. There were bits here and there. I just was full, instead of grabbing the other guitar, I was grabbing with this, playing with this, and then I found out it was very easy for me for certain positions since the neck was a little bit thinner, and then I just decided to take it on tour, and it was just adding one more channel to my set, and basically I didn't have to do anything, just have a splitter pedal and run the same guitar through my pedals and with the acoustic signal, and there you go. So it's a really great result, and I mean, I was able to play it live so many times already.
How cool! That is just awesome.
Yeah,
Wait, brother.
yeah. You're welcome. Cool.
All right. Well, there's a lot of things that I would love to know about you. I'm sure that, hi, everybody tuning in. I'm going to ask, if that's okay with you, I'd like to ask you some personal questions. Not too personal, but
Go
personal
ahead. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
about your career mostly, because although we got a great day and night together, I just had an awesome time. So did we just had a magical experience. Thank you for inviting us over for that. But there's still so much that I wanted to ask you that I did. There's just not enough time to get around
Yeah.
because literally, I really believe that you are one of the most prolific artists, flamenco guitar artists in Spain right now, and if not one of, if not the best, in my opinion. I really, really enjoy your music and what you've done over the years too. Even when I discovered you with Radio Tarifa. So, what I wanted to ask you is, like, when did you begin, and did you start on guitar or a different instrument, or was it electric guitar? What brought you into music?
Well, I was born into a family, South American and Middle Eastern background, and then we would listen to South American folklore all the time. Merengue, vallenato, like the Colombian stuff, and then the Middle Eastern music. And my dad plays the Arabic oud, so that's maybe the first instrument I've really heard from inside the belly of my mother. And he used to listen to all the classical composers, to his Arabic classical music, and also to flamenco, because that was a music that he could relate to very easily, because of the singing was very similar, the tonalities on the guitars and the oud. And he got really interested in learning flamenco guitar as well. So he would play both oud and the flamenco guitar at home. And so whenever he would leave the instrument on the sofa, I was a little boy, I would crawl up there and touch it, whatever, and play with it. And eventually one day I would start to try to copy him. And then one day he said, like, he saw me putting these 2 or 3 chords there without nobody having told me yet. And then he's like, you want to learn? So he started to teach me the basics of some technique and some flamenco harmonies and rhythms. And eventually when I got into the thing, and he saw that my interest was serious, and I mean, they didn't have to force me to play or to practice. It was something that I kind of understood the neck I thought this was something that I liked, and then I started to take classes with his teacher as well, and that's how I eventually gradually would increase my knowledge and get into that.
Wow, that's awesome. That is so cool.
Yeah, and the cool thing is in Freiburg, in south of Germany, there was a big flamenco community also, and those guys were maybe the pioneers of flamenco people in Germany, part of that movement back in the 70s, I don't know. And and then I was able to practice guitar at the dance schools over there and accompany dance. So I was also not only exposed to what is solistic playing, like solo playing, but also dance accompany, and through the dance, the singing. And since I've heard the music since a young age, all those chants somehow were familiar to me. So I could relate the chords to whatever was happening on the recordings, or if somebody was dancing or singing. So I could kind of bring those things together, and there you go.
Wow, you had it in your face.
Somehow I was lucky in that sense, to be born outside of Spain, but in my house, in my family, we would use to that music, and then somehow it was something very natural.
Oh, that's amazing. So, did you also study the oud at that time while you were younger as
Yeah,
well guitar?
not seriously, but I would play, I would take it, I would play, I would mimic whatever my dad would play, and we only had one instrument, one oud. So he would play maybe a line, whatever, and then he would hand me the oud. I would copy it. So that was really like the old style, like the like oral transmission kind of traditional, um, from generation to generation kind of thing. And then that's how I learned. It was by copying, by looking, by hearing, and absorbing that music.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So, well, I don't know if a lot of your followers and fans just realize how good you are at playing rock style,
Yeah.
rock, electric guitar, like we're talking like Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads style. Amir is amazing, and I mean, I play some electric guitar myself, some death metal type stuff, but I am nowhere near. He showed me this video the other day of him just noodling around. He said, "Oh, I'm just noodling around, just whatever." Rehearse, and it's like a new version of Eruption. It was
Yeah.
so how you. It was epic, yeah. Even Arlene, it was.
Okay.
So how did you get started with rock guitar? It's a
Yeah.
completely different instrument. Still six, it's
It's absolutely different. It has nothing to do with each other, right? The thing is, in my neighborhood, there were many. I've had many friends there, and one guy, the elder brother of a really close friend of mine, he was 4 years older than us, and I was about 12 at that time. He was 16, and he was into listening hard rock and heavy metal. So my friend got hold of this tape, this cassette, where on one side there was Ride the Lightning, on the other side Kill 'Em All. And then I heard that for the first time in his room, on a hi-fi, and we were like, "Damn, that there's some energy behind that." And then, of course, my musical part is like, how do they create that sound? I didn't know that electric guitars would exist, because in my house, there was no Beatles. We've never heard to any of those like Rocky Horror Picture Shows or bands, or like we didn't know about Led Zeppelin, because my parents would that wasn't their culture. So I didn't know about the shape nor the sound of electric guitars. And then I would try to imitate that sound by putting between the strings, I would put a very, very thin plastic layer through the strings and try to make them buzz. But it wasn't the same sound until I got hold of my first metal magazine. I saw it on the street somewhere. I'm like, man, those guys, they have like long hair, and they hold these crazy, strange guitars. And a couple of years later, with 14 or so, I had to. I mean, on the flamenco guitar, I tried to get dun dun da da dun da da, seek and destroy, but it wouldn't sound. So I went into a guitar shop, and I would play hours and hours, like many afternoons in a row. I would go to these shops until they would tell me, stop it, leave the shop, it's enough, because I just wanted to play, and I didn't have the money to buy my own guitar. And then I talked to my dad, and I had a little bit of extra money, and then I bought my first like Stratocaster imitation kind of thing, which I still have, and and eventually then an amp, and that's when I started. And then I would just headphones, and I would try to do whatever I could. And here and there on TV, there would be some shows, rock shows, or something on German TV. That was also a very important thing because that window in Germany, being exposed to the Western music, kind of the whole palette of Western music, that was really important. And then through the exchange with other friends, you know, you get these LPs, these cassettes, and we would tape them for each other and record them for each other. And then that was my soundtrack when I was in my teens. So I went through the whole 80s metal and 90s metal. And of course, I went back to see where all that came from. And, you know, just since I already had that discipline of that love of playing flamenco guitar, it was just a matter of sitting down and just figure out things and playing. You know, I started out with the oud that has a pick, so slight different hand movement, but it allowed me to control whatever pick movement meant on a string. So it was just the love of that sound, and that made me go crazy, and just copying, you know, play stop reverse on the cassettes, and then on some VHS we recorded from some shows, I would you know, learn a lot of licks and things like that. But it was basically very self-taught and by ear, all the electric guitar. I never had a teacher. And whenever YouTube came up many years back, that was a little bit of relief, because then I could see, okay, that's really how they do it, because I would try things, but I would never know exactly if that was right. It sounded okay to me, so, and I enjoy it. And it's true, as you said, many of my followers, they don't know that I really do that on almost on the same level I play the flamenco guitar. It's just like an instrument I grab, and I feel so free, and yeah, it's just fun.
You really can. I mean, you're very expressive. You have all the techniques down. It's amazing that you learned it all by ear. Especially, you know, back in the day when we were learning things, that's the only way you could do it, because there wasn't a lot on video, and there wasn't almost any type of video training tapes or anything like that. That some of the magazines had some tablature in it, but you know,
Yeah.
it's hard to get the feel from reading a page, obviously. So I'm very impressed that you can play all these instruments with such mastery. And that's I wanted to get to something else now that I wanted to ask you for a long time. Is we're going to go back band, right? Okay. So I wanted to know first, what would you say was your role in that band? Did you start it? Were you the musical director? Because it is very difficult to make flamenco fusion with anything, and you somehow had this seamless blend of different world musics with flamenco in a very tasteful way. And that's very difficult, because you kind of have to be master of both styles. You can't just be a dabbler and just throw
Yeah.
it. You really have to know what's going on in depth. So I think I asked you about 18 questions there, but
Okay, you were mentioning because sometimes it cuts, so it's Radio Tarifa, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Radio Tarifa. The way I was engaged with that band was very interesting. First of all, because Radio Tarifa has been now, you know, the activity stopped 10 years ago, so many people don't know about it. Maybe people of our age and a little bit more, they will know. And it was one of the most legendary bands that came out of Spain, doing Mediterranean world music, flamenco, Arabic, and North African with South American. And when I was living in Germany, I was accompanying a dance course, a workshop by Maestro Joaquin Ruiz, an amazing dancer. And he would, and after that workshop, the lady who had set up the workshop, she gave me my fee, and she gave me this CD, Radio Tarifa album, Rumba Argelina, their first album. So I went back home. I was listening with it with my father, and we would see all those Arabic influences. We're like, wow, that's amazing. This band does really some interesting stuff. So some years later, I was in Madrid. I was about 23 or so, and I performed with the Maestro Joaquin Ruiz at the theater for a dance concert. Like he would do his dance company, I would play with him the oud. And in the audience, those guys of Radio Tarifa, three guys of them, you know, were the founders. They were in the audience, and after the show, they came backstage, hey, you know, our guitar player and string player, he's leaving the band. Would you like to join the band? And I was like, this can't be happening, you know, because it's a band I had been listening for 5 or 6 years already. So I just had to learn the repertoire. And of course, with the repertoire, I had to learn other string instruments, the banjo, the bouzouki, saz, and things like that, because they had all these amazing sounds. And basically what they did, um, I mean, the merit goes on them, the research in the first place. They were always looking for like North African rhythms and try to mix it with a Spanish melody, or take a jota rhythm from the north of Spain and mix it with some like Algerian sound. And, you know, they would make this amazing mixtures and finding where are the melodies or the rhythms connected, and take it from there. So they really had a knowledge and a balance about it. Wasn't just a collage. And so it was really, really interesting, you know, or accompanying tangos just with an oud, darbuka, and a bass and some flutes, just changing the sound of the arrangements. And that was something unique that hadn't been done before. And the I don't know if people know that, but the term world music was invented by, I don't know whom, but he was one of BBC's reporters, journalists, music journalists, and when he was talking about Radio Tarifa when they came up, he took that term world music, and that somehow became actually like a brand, you know, for many other artists to hook up on that platform, you know, and just make their music. And so that band was the pioneer of world music somehow. And I had the pleasure to be touring with them for 10 years. I mean, we would do mostly international tours, maybe 60, 70% internationally and 30 or 40% in Spain. So it was really, really nice. My first big tour was, I was 23, and they flew us out to the States, and we did a 3, 4 week tour on a sleeping bus, on a nightliner, and just through so many states. You know, I don't know how many gigs we did. And that was like, wow, this is actually real tour life, you know? So that was really nice. And I learned so much by playing this repertoire. And then my interest just, you know, woke up. I was waking up. My interest, my curiosity was waked up to find more music about Turkey, about Greece, about the Mediterranean, and that eventually led me also to make my own band, which was more an instrumental kind of thing. Zubazar was all that Mediterranean fusion, and that's mainly the story about me and Radio Tarifa.
Wow, how cool. Well, thanks for letting me know. I always wondered about that.
Yeah,
And an amazing opportunity, but also very well deserved, because I don't know how many other people in the world could have pulled that off. You know, not many people have the background that you have, as we're coming to find out. So that's
yeah. I mean, it was tough for me because I had to basically learn the whole repertoire by ear, sitting there and taking these instruments I had never played, and try to find tunings that were where I could feel comfortable. I would take the banjo and tune it the same way I tune my oud, so I could have the same positions, and then I could play all those Moorish Oriental scales in a different manner. And it was just I was nervous, and but something inside of me, just because I always wanted to be a musician, you know, making a living out of music, just enjoying it. And so I really said, you know, you got to get that thing down. You just learn those tunes, and but they were so different from my flamenco thing, and uh, and also playing in a band is differently than being a solo artist or playing your solo tunes. When you play your solo tunes, you play whatever you know best, and that's what you do. And playing with musicians, and this goes out to everybody else here, playing with musicians is a whole different thing. It's about how to interact with somebody else and his feeling and his way of approaching things. And it's not about am I better, faster, or whatever. It's about how to connect and bring something together and make that sound, actually.
you're absolutely right. A lot of times, you're, yeah, the job for one of us in a band is to be support, you know, or
Yeah,
make musicians feel safe, like so they can go out and do something amazing, and and then every once in a while we have our chance to step in the light and do a little lick here or there or whatever. And I, I'm not
absolutely.
always in the spotlight pretty much because you were handling a lot of main melodies and everything. But I remember the first time we actually met face to face, it was at Steve Stevens concert in
Yeah, I just wanted to say that. Yeah, you were touring with Steve Stevens. I remember you were his second guitarist, and that was awesome. And you came to this cool club in Madrid, and somehow that night, not too many people showed up, but just the right amount to make a good vibe. And that way, we also could hang out after the show. It was really cool.
I had a great time.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I mean, I just got really fortunate that I was able to work with a
He's a legend.
legend. But it's also well deserved because that guy can play. His depth of knowledge on the guitar and music is just profound, you know. So,
Yeah.
and sometimes I was wondering, what the hell am I doing up here? And then every once in a while, we would do like a solo duel where we would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
having to trade off and improvise, and we're having a little challenge duel. And dueling with Steve Stevens that was no easy feat every night, but probably one of the most challenging and the funnest thing I've ever done. And I'm just actually very, very fortunate that they took a chance on me. And
Awesome. Yeah, I'm very happy about that.
yeah, yeah. And then, I mean, we got to go to Madrid, and I got to meet you, and yeah, and we've been friends ever since. That's good.
Yeah,
So
that's nice.
now you have you also were in a group, or maybe you're still working with them, that had an affiliation with Steve Stevens as well.
Absolutely right. I was on tour many years back. We played in Tel Aviv, and that was with Chambao, one of Spain's biggest pop flamenco pop. They call it flamenco chill kind
Oh,
of
they're
pop music. Yeah,
yeah,
beautiful music, you know,
I
with
love this.
Lamari, the singer, and their whole band. Really nice people, amazing band. So I ended up recording on two of their albums, and I did one tour with them, and and then we were in this at the bar in this hotel, and we wanted to go to Jerusalem, and we were looking for a shuttle to, like, you know, to organize a bus or something. So there was this guy standing to me with this Indian lady, and she was a singer, and he was like, oh, they looked like artists, like very cool people. So we did that city trip to Jerusalem, and in the evening we sat down at the bar of the hotel, and we were having a beer. We were just talking, and then he's like, "Yeah, my name is Ben. You know, I'm a producer and I do music." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm a guitarist, whatever." It's like, "Do you have something that I can listen to?" And at that time, I had the demo recordings of my album, Nine Guitars, Nueve Guitarras.
Oh,
I hadn't released it yet, but I had some demos on my iPhone, you know, in case like you can share it, you can listen to. And then I just gave him my iPhone while we kept chatting. And what amazed me was I saw Ben sitting there holding the iPhone like this. It was a 7 minute piece, the Buleria, a long piece. Normally nobody sits and hears 7 minutes. And he was just sitting there, you know, not saying anything. We were having a beer chatting. And then he's like, "Hey, cool, that's really nice." So we just exchanged our cards and contact. And half a year later, he calls me up. It's like, "Hey, you would like to fancy doing some gigs?" And then he sends me out the song, and he said, "You know, there's a song that Steve Stevens had recorded. It's a very vivid and kind of virtuose Spanish guitar sound, and it was the song Pistolero." And that was, I'm like, wow, I'm playing actually a Steve Stevens tune. So that was really cool for me. And then I played with him. Until now, I've been performing with him and his live sets. And that is also Juno Reactor. That is also one of the legends of trance music. They kind of invented actually the trance music back in the days. And this whole trip with him has been for me such an mind-opening experience on many levels, on a musical level, on a personal level. And Ben is such an amazing person and human being. You can learn so much from him. And we've been in so many situations on the road, in vans, backstage, on stage, big festivals, small clubs, whatever. We've done it all. And every time it's like we're doing something serious. We're doing something. We're giving 100% for the people. And that was really nice band vibe I was exposed to with him. And I could play again my electric guitar. I would have huge Mesa Boogie stacks on stage, all for myself, and I was so happy.
Yeah, there's nothing in front of that wall of sound, right? And
Yeah.
chord or something. All right. Well, I do have I have so many questions for you, brother. But I wanted to let's get around to your album that you were just mentioning, uh, The Way of a Guitarist. I
Yeah.
didn't have demos from years before, but that was the first actual CD that I got of yours, and yeah, it blew me away. And I thought, what an interesting concept! Every single song is done on a completely different guitar, and you can really hear the difference in timbre and depth of each instrument, and they all sound beautiful. I mean, they're all probably expensive masterpieces, I would
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
But the pieces that you chose to play on each one, it really, really brought out the colors in each instrument. And but the pieces themselves, I mean, they're just gorgeous. So if you guys don't know about Amir's music, that's a great gateway drug. That's a great introduction to Amir's playing and you know, the broadness of his musical palette. So can you tell me about how did you secure the guitars? I mean, do you own those guitars, or were they entrusted to you to do the recording?
Yeah, I will go a little bit back. In around 2006, I did my first album, Pasando por Tabernas, which basically these compositions were my first kind of serious compositions I put together. And then a friend of mine in Germany, he had a home studio. He told me, "Look, I'm giving you a free studio, like a free day, a whole day of a studio. Do what you want." So I prepared myself many months. I said, "That's my thing." And I flew to Germany and I recorded that album in one day. I prepared myself so good and recorded that. And well, that was that. And then years later, I had the urge and I had gathered all these new material and my way of playing changed. And then I'm friends with Johannes Inhofen. He is the owner of a very famous shop called Mundo Flamenco, and he sells flamenco guitars. He's a distributor. He comes to Spain. He knows all the big builders, and he buys those instruments and sells them. So the idea was, we came up with this idea on doing that tribute to the guitar builders. You know, nobody had done it so far, I think, you know, I don't know, but I think nobody had done it in that way. So he had about 30 amazing guitars in the studio, which hadn't been sold yet. And I had my compositions already kind of to 80% composed. I always like to leave a little open window once I'm in the studio. I will never finish something at home and then go to a studio and record it. I always like to see what I come up with in that right moment, because sometimes you just feel that you need to change something, and that's okay. So, and it makes things sound fresh too, not too sterilized. And, uh, and so I had to take a guitar and see with which tune that would, you know, resonate, and what the sound was. It more percussive, was it more melodic, was it more sweet, was it dark, was it whatever, and try to see. And the difficult thing was, I had to find my nails for each recording, for each guitar. I had to refile my nails and adjust a little bit my hand, because normally we're used to one instrument, the one we play, and then just record something that will be there for eternity was a challenge for me. And but I like challenges. That's actually the best way I work. I mean, you could tell me within 8 months you have to do this and this, then I'll probably, you know, wait for 5 months and then do it all in 3 months or whatever. You know, I like that little bit of pressure behind my back, because that's an energy that keeps me going. You know, not that the 5 months I wouldn't do anything, but I might be very involved mentally and emotionally and checking out things. But so that was a very intense time of recording, and I did record it again at the same studio by Thomas Vogt, T how do you TEFAU, TFAU in Germany. In Germany, you say that like this. And he is an amazing home studio. He is a a great classical guitarist and also a flamenco guitarist. And he is one of the characters that I had the pleasure to work with when I was younger too. And that those flamenco groups I was telling before, he was one of those people who was involved in that. So these guys know me since I'm 8 years old, and eventually to be able to work with them later and to have their support was something really nice. And I'm always thankful for that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm going to have to go back and get your first album because that sounds
Oh,
very. Record an album in an entire thing in one day. Yeah, that's a great challenge for.
yeah, I remember I dressed in white, like a white, very very loose clothes. I was barefoot. I went in there at 9 o'clock and I got out at 9 or 10. And I laid down all the tracks. The only thing we had to do is a couple of weeks or months later, I took one of my friends, Pablo Martin Jones, who's a percussionist in Spain. We flew together to Germany, and he recorded the percussions, and we did some palmas, and that was it. That was, but it was, yeah, very, very challenging. I went straight to bed after that day. That was really, I don't know if somebody has done something like this before, like a whole studio album in the flamenco world. I'm sure there might be other, but just take the risk. Your first album, just do it like that. But I've always liked that kind of energy. Risk is a very powerful energy. It makes you be very, very right in the spot.
I agree. Absolutely
Yeah.
agree. It's funny that you mentioned Mundo Flamenco Guitars. That before I had met you in person, that's the first time I actually saw you was on some older YouTube that were on the Mundo Flamenco YouTube channel, and you have a bunch up there actually. So it's good that you have so much material living there on YouTube, and you have a lot where you're playing solo, but you have a lot where you're doing a duet with another guitarist, and they're just gorgeous arrangements for two guitars. Can you tell me about who that is, and how did you get the arrangements together so nice?
Yeah, you probably mean Pepe Justicia,
Yes,
a guy with a white hair.
yeah, but there was another guy. It was,
Oh, well, I play the oud and I play the guitar, and he plays the guitar, right?
yeah, sometimes you both played the guitar, I believe, as well.
Yeah, I think I did two features. One was with Mariano Martin. He's a guitarist. He lives in Strasbourg in France. He's both flamenco and classical, very great musician. And we did one or two videos. And then the other ones I did was with Pepe Justicia, and Pepe Justicia was my maestro here in Spain. When I came to Jerez, 1997, I went to him and I had classes with him, uh, private classes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for a whole year or so. And that was really intense. He was like my big maestro once here in Spain. And I learned from him many techniques, everything about his way of shaping harmonies and composing and the weight you need for playing. And he would just show me around Jerez and take me to those really kind of hidden and private flamenco jams where like only 4 or 5 guys would sit, elder guys of the elder generation, and sing all the night, and just like really classy and cool jams, just wine, some tapas, and people just go crazy and sing like I don't know, Mateo Solea, or I mean, there's Luis de la Pica. These guys, they're not around anymore, um, but or El Capullo de Jerez. Nights, long nights of crazy flamenco jams, and being able to see that, with him and have that access was just amazing. So we ended up playing together, and I remember my first gig with him, and I think he was clever. I had learned all these like fancy solo guitar pieces by him, and eventually one day he would tell me, learn those chords, and he would show me those chord progressions to accompany his rumbas, his bulerias, or whatever. And I just had to play chords. There were I wouldn't do any falseta, nor big overdubs. Here and there a little thing, but it was just chords. And then he said, we have a gig with his band somewhere in Spain, in Andalusia. And then he told me, yeah, but don't bring your guitar. I have a djembe for you. And I'm like, okay, I didn't dare saying anything. So I went there and he gave me this super tiny baby djembe, and my position on stage was far right, next to, I don't know, a saxophone player or something. But I didn't have a mic. So he just made sure to sit me there and play and just have the experience of sitting there without having actually the tension and the pressure of playing the guitar. So that was actually very good because I was just kind of mimicking the rhythm. It was a little bit surreal, of course, but then I had the feeling. So the next time he had a gig, I was on guitar and I felt already like part of the band, you know, and it wasn't a big deal for me. So he really made it very smooth, and he was also a very smart teacher in that sense. And he opened my path as a soloist on a more serious level after that. Yeah.
Oh, how cool.
And the arrangements basically on those pieces, I have to say, you know, when you just get together with people who are comfortable with their instrument, you kind of can sit together an hour before, and if you have to record a 5-minute video, you can kind of talk through what you're going to do, and you do 2 or 3 takes, and then you just take the better take. In the case of the Colombiana, for example, Bucaramanga with Pepe Justicia, he just said, you know, send me the song and I'll do an arrangement. And actually he came up with an amazing arrangement. If you take that, his track only, it's like a solo piece, you know, but it blends beautifully and merges in the sense of 2 guitars, and that is amazing, you know. And I just want to add something. Because of that video, I was called by Jose Maria Bandera, Paco de Lucia's nephew, because he was doing that show, that new project, Canción Andaluza, which is Paco's last album, posthumous album, which he never could bring on stage. So Jose Maria was like, I want to do that live and I need guitarists. And he was looking up in Spain for guitarists. And then somebody told him, you know, probably you want to call Amir. And we had met 20 years back, but we've never played together. And then he was checking me out on the YouTube, and that precise video of me playing very nicely together with another guitarist made him decide to call me. And then I was also featuring in that project, learning all those crazy arrangements that Paco had done on this album. And that was, I encourage people to look up Canción Andaluza, and there might be some live videos of some shows we've done, and it's really nice.
I bet it. Album, beautiful piece of work, and to be reinterpreted and replayed by you, by musicians of your caliber, it's just awesome. So, well, that's really, really cool. Let me. I wanted to ask you then. Let's go to your new album, because you had just, you have a brand new one out, and if anybody doesn't know, called and similar to what I said about his 9 Guitars album, this one is just absolutely gorgeous. Every track on it is amazing. You know, a lot of guitar players will record one really amazing album in their entire life, and that's gonna be their stamp on the world. But now you've just done 3, right? So tell me a little bit about this album. I mean, how long have you been working on this? You must have just gone from working on the 9 Guitars album. Well, it's time to start writing for the next one.
Yeah, more or less. Normally, once I finish an album, I kind of let that go because it's very intense, and even you know, after you release an album, you don't listen to it anymore because you've probably listened to it more than anybody else will listen to it. You've gone through every song so many times during the recording, during the mix, and the thing is, I started maybe 5 years back composing, and you know, I always like to kind of start doing something whenever I have the feeling that something new is happening within my playing, or like there's new influences. And of course, it was long overdue. I mean, 7 years between one album and the other, it's a little bit long, but that's how it was, because I thought I wanted to present something new, new at least in my musical language. And so I started composing some songs, and I already incorporated some of those songs live in some live shows. I would play maybe the Granaína or the Minera. And the Minera, the premiere of that I did in a festival in Denmark maybe 5 years ago. Yeah, so that's a long time. But I change over the times, and then once I record, maybe it's a little different version from what I did originally. I always try to evolve a little bit. And then it was just an intense time of coming up with ideas and playing around. It's not about just having an idea and, okay, that sounds nice. You know, just take that idea and squeeze it and play it over and over again until you get bored of it and you need to make something else out of it or something, you know, a little bit like this. It's like that. And when you take a lemon, you squeeze it out until the end. That's a little bit the way of doing it in my case. And especially I like to leave stuff composed that when I listen to it, I can say, okay, I like it, you know. Of course, I always will listen to the things I could have done better, but I think there has to be a point where you say, okay, I can relate to that, you know, that's aligned with whatever I'm feeling. And I'm more into the emotional thing than just the effect of doing fast things or like technical stuff. I always like to hide the technique behind a nice melody. And sometimes even when I teach, people say, I want to learn that. This sounds so nice. I'm like, okay, you know, that's tough. And then I'm like, that's really tough, you know. Like even me, I'm like, all right, yeah, I never knew that this was so tough actually. And the melody sounds so easy, right? And and that's something I like, to hide the technique behind the music and think of the emotion. And that's probably what I try to do when I record also. And maybe people are interested in to know how I record. I don't punch too much and cut and paste. I like to play certain sequences, like longer sequences, and make sure they sound nice. If I don't like how they sound, I repeat them, and I know exactly where I have to enhance something. I mean, if there is like a huge mistake, of course, we punch in, you know. But I like those like little bit longer sequences and add them and then edit them together and paste them together, because that makes a feeling of you're playing it live in front of a mic with a great sound. And basically I play like I play on the album, I play them live, you know, with the extra thing that you're sometimes more nervous of the sound or whatever. And, you know, live is different, but that's what I play. So it's not really so different from who I am live or studio. And of course, I have to practice those pieces like everybody else. It's not just like I go out there and play them. I need to prepare. And there are some things that I composed in the studio on the spot in front of the microphone. For example, the Sevillanas, I had nothing because I was in trouble. I started to record that album 3 years back in Madrid. I laid down the solo pieces with a friend of mine. He's a great technician. He's Hector Tellini, bass player of Zubazar, and also a great sound guy. So I recorded those tracks, and then the Canción Andaluza project got in the way. And I said, okay, you know, leave my project aside because this is something very interesting. So I had to invest a lot of time for that. And once that was kind of over, I said, okay, let's go back and do that. But I didn't find the muse of composing and finding new stuff because I had been so distracted by all these other things. And then the Hans Zimmer thing came, and I was touring with them. And then before our last Hans Zimmer tour in November, December, I said, I have to get it done. So while I'm on tour, it can be mixed and mastered, and it can be pressed, so I can release it this year. So I had a lot of pressure going into the studio. And so one or two pieces weren't actually, you know, the Alegría wasn't all the way composed, and the Sevillanas, I made it up literally. I took one day and I sat there and I came up with these ideas. I don't know, it went really fast. And those melodies just came out. I was thinking of these different shapes and tonalities. And then I was thinking more about the melody. I was thinking with which instrument can I make the arrangements? And through that idea, the melodies would come to my mind kind of. So it was really interesting. Sometimes the creative process is so different. And you just have to be open, say, okay, you know, that works, that's going somewhere, you know.
Wow,
And
give that Sevillanas a listen again.
yeah.
To know the story behind it now. Wow, that's
Yeah,
cool.
and the Alegría, I had some bits and pieces on my iPhone recorded, and then I had to listen to those pieces, and I said, oh, that's like a nice beginning of something, and then I would take it somewhere, and then you know, I would shape it, and also it took me like I did it Alegrías and Sevillanas especially, and Seguirías. I did it in the studio. Everything else I had pre prepared already. It was tough. I mean, that's what I say. The risk is always there, and you have to be able to just decide. Okay, this is okay. Let's leave that way. Don't change it anymore. You know, the technician said, you know, turn off the Vivaldi mode. You know, because I was like, I was going crazy with my melodies, and he's like, you know, just turn off the Vivaldi mode. Forget it. It's okay. The tune is fine. You know, so it's always good to have good buddies on the other side of the mic who can give you advice. That is very important. Everything you can't do everything by yourself always, right? Yeah. And you know, just one other thing, we've been talking so much about me, and I was always so stoked when they called you for the Monsters of Rock cruise. And just tell the people a little bit of that about that, because that is so cool that you've been sharing with so many of your friends and also idols and people you've been following so many years, all those huge rock bands.
Oh yeah, I'm just really, really fortunate. To, I'm just really fortunate. We've been asked to be a part of that. I mean, this is for rock bands, and somehow I was able to sneak my flamenco guitar in there, and I've been on every single Monsters of Rock cruise since the very first one in 2012. But I'm lucky enough to know the producers of that cruise, um, and, and hold on a second. I'm getting just one minute. Can you go next door? Johnny's locked out of his house. Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm lucky enough to know the producers of that cruise, and when I told them that I was working on a new album called Heavy Mellow, doing metal classics, he said, "Well, I think I got something for you. How would you like to go on this?" And you know, with other bands like uh, Tesla, and you know, just I mean, 50 other bands that are just amazing rock bands.
Beautiful.
So it worked out. Sometimes we've played the big stage, but mostly they put us on a kind of like a piano bar or a lounge or whatever, which is actually perfect for the kind of acoustic, sort of mellower vibe that we were doing. And actually we did Arlene and I did something for the Monsters of Rock cruise yesterday. Uh,
Okay.
they Everybody, obviously we're all locked down, and we're all doing our live streaming videos from our kitchen or our home or whatever. Well, they use this top of the line pro crew that they have, and we went to Third Encore Rehearsal Studios, which is North Hollywood, where pretty much everybody rehearses. I think the last time I was there, the Black Label Society was there, and just everybody. And they had this great stage set up with a video backdrop. Even the floor was glass, and the floor was a video drone. So
Okay, cool.
he was on the floor, and so all this lighting, and Arlene and I did a lot of our repertoire flamenco metal songs. I did a lot of songs from my latest album, Robots from Outer Spain. So it was just a lot of fun. So I'm still affiliated with the Monsters of Rock cruise.
Very good.
I'm sure they're going to have another one next year. And every year, they're just, it's a really good community. And I've actually, through that same production company, I've played on a lot of other of the cruises, like the Yes prog rock cruise, and also the Moody Blues cruise.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is the people that attend the Monsters of Rock cruise are more of the rockers, more the
Right.
denim leather wearing type of rock. They're actually the nicest people you could ever.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
they might scare our parents or whatever, but they're really the most polite, nicest, easygoing people. Something about rock and roll and metal, just getting it out. You kind of get all that negativity and aggression out of your system with the music. So
Right.
as a person, you're kind of calm. So that's what
Absolutely.
I noticed about the rockers with that. And
Absolutely.
I feel so fortunate to be able to sort of have a foot in both worlds. You know, I'm not considered the greatest flamenco guitarist, and I know that, and I'm not considered the greatest rock guy either. But it's nice to have a little bit here and there.
It's great. I mean, there's nothing better than knowing where your virtues are, and and people like us, we can split easily from one genre to the other in that sense and be feel comfortable. And that's the best thing because we don't need one thing or the other. We just enjoy whatever we feel like in different moments, and that is maybe something that few people only can understand. And sometimes people from the outside, they will say, "Oh, well, you're not too authentic, or you're not too," because I mean, what is authentic? Authentic is being as cool as you can be as a person and as a musician, do your best, and that's it. There's not much to it.
Yeah, being yourself, nothing.
Right, right,
And
right.
Spain told me the first time I went there, they said, why do you have to worry about trying to sound like Vicente Amigo? Stop
Yeah,
that. I just try and
yeah,
sound myself. And as soon as I started doing that, that's when you can start developing a style. And then if you're an artist, I mean, I think the goal of most artists is you want to leave your stamp on the world somehow. You want to leave your mark, you want to share your art, basically.
yeah.
And and if you can develop your own style, then your art is more unique, and it's not just a secondhand copy of someone who's amazing. Which I would love to be able to play like you and Vicente and Paco. That's probably not going to happen in my lifetime. But I can play like me. I can be the best Ben that I can be.
Absolutely. But even I've gone through moments where you always look up, you always look to these idols of that musical community, and you always see that wow, there is a big gap, and but finally, what you find is I can't. Why should I be playing their stuff like they do? I can learn from that concept, that musicianship, that devotion to the instrument, and try to apply those concepts on my playing and eventually come up with my sound, with my compositions. And then it's fine because that's aligned with my emotional approach to it. And because Pepe Justicia, many years back, he told me, talking about this very, very gypsy flamenco character, this guy, this amazing singer who died many years back, Luis de la Pica. And he told me once, Amir, you will never be as flamenco as Luis de la Pica, but what you do can be as flamenco as Luis Lapica in the sense of find your voice and find your place in this world, and that's it.
I think that's great advice to every
Yeah,
guitarist, especially
yeah,
is yeah, being just the authenticity of being yourself when you make.
absolutely.
We're trying to make art here, and and
Yeah,
and there is no good and bad art. It's subjective, right? So.
absolutely, absolutely. I would
Now,
never dare.
speaking of that, I mean, one of the, I just want to this last thing I'm going to ask you about, okay? Because I know I'm grilling you here, brother. But there's just so much I want to know, and I'm sure a lot of people want to know. Um, Tell me about the Hans Zimmer live tours. If people don't know, Amir's been touring in the biggest arenas in the world, playing with a huge production, a huge cast of musicians on stage, playing the music of Hans Zimmer from some of the most famous films in history. And you're doing the guitar role of not just flamenco guitar, but also electric guitar. And um, and